Shalom, Israel. I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to Lekman out there doing his work of faith and labor of love and true sincerity. Right? And this is Sirach, chapter 38, verse 24. The wisdom of a learned man cometh by opportunity of leisure, and he that hath little business shall become wise. So, I pretty much wanted to get into this scripture and talk about time management, and our opportunity of leisure, the free time, the so-called free time that we have, every single day. All right. So, we know brothers have a typical work day of, 8 hours. For some brothers, it may vary 10 hours, 12 hours, or you may have mandatory overtime at your job, so on and so forth. We have our time, if brothers have families or whatever like that, have to handle, your worldly responsibilities, you know, and of course, we have the word of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which trumps everything, even our worldly responsibilities, but we know we have to handle those things as men, you know, and it's just with this 24 hours a day, it just always feels like it's not enough time to do everything that you want to do, especially when it comes to the work of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and we have so many avenues of this truth to get into, it's endless, just getting into the Hebrew, you might want to sharpen up on that. Of course, you want to do your daily readings, and extrapolate, some type of wisdom, from certain situations that you can apply into yourself, more faith and things of that nature. You have the different facets of history to get into, the different time periods, time of the Greeks, time of the Romans, the history of Israel in general, you know, and it's just so much to get into. You got your different lessons that you want to do. You want to watch other brothers' lessons, and stuff like that. So it's like, we know that pretty much, with a lot of things, we go off for the spirit of things, Sometimes, you decide to do a lesson, it just happens off the spirit. But then, you have other times where, you have to take some time out and put some thought to your lesson, that your lesson can be edifying, And just when you think of things in that aspect on a regular basis, we have to deal with things in some type of order, which is why, I suggest, for brothers that, it seems like, you're all over the place, you know what I'm saying, and things like that. You might want to set up a schedule for yourself, Now, as I said, sometimes, you're going to go off the spirit with certain things, or you might just be scrolling through the feed on YouTube, might want to watch, a couple of lessons or something like that. But what you will make sure that you would try to get back to your regular scheduled program, because our lives is nothing but a big program, Look at the cycle that we go through every day. We're in a program, just how the TV and the ways of this world program wicked 2/3 mind, you know, our daily lives is a program. And Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah has us what on a program, we have to come out week in and week out to preach the word, you know. Now we have the standard of, making 2 shows a week, So what? We're programmed, So as you being a man of the Lord, you have to keep your house in order, And Slakia, and as far as keeping our house in order, this is I believe it's Sirach 27. Yeah, Sirach 27:3. Unless a man hold himself diligently in the fear of the Lord, his house shall soon be overthrown. Right? So, we want to have our house in order. And, 1 Corinthians 14:40 says what? Let everything be done in decency and in order. So the best way for brothers to have some type of order so that you're not just all over the place all the time, is to set up a schedule for yourself. You might want to do, say you have 5 or 6 hours of free time a day, and if that's all the time that you can do, and it's sincerely all the time that you can do, and you put forth in all your effort into the Lord, then hey, the Lord will accept that. You might want to spend an hour on your daily readings, and sit back and meditate upon them things, or take notes based upon the things in which you read. Make some highlights in your strap, whatever the case may be. You might want to spend a half an hour on the Hebrew. Okay. You might want to spend an hour or some change, watching brother shows, watching the apostle shows, things of that nature. You might want to spend another hour getting into, some history, that you jotted down in a note that you make sure that you want to get into. Or you might have a book of edification, that you might want to skim through so you can, pick apart certain things that you can do a lesson, and add that into the spirit, And then sometimes you just might want to take some time out to meditate for yourself upon the scriptures, to examine yourself and to think upon things of what you can do better and different things of this nature, So, just bringing out those different examples, this is why, brothers should try to set up a schedule for themselves. And as I said, everything is not going to go according to your schedule every single day. Because, if, you happen to be just seeing something on the internet, or, a piece of edification on the news, or something like that you might want to bring out, then you're just going to go for the spirit and bring out that edification. Well, that's all good and well, because, we do things off of the spirit. But after that, you get right back to your regularly scheduled program, man. Just like everything else within our lives, man. So, that's just pretty much the point, that I wanted to just bring out, because that's something that I want to incorporate, for myself, and which I try to do. But what I know I have to do a better job of, and, I just hope brothers, take that into consideration. If you're a brother that, feel as though that you're all over the place, and, you just don't know how to go about things in a proper manner. Just set up a schedule for yourself, That's all. You might not get it right completely, the first try out or whatever, setting up your schedule. But, as you go along, you fine tune things, and you see the different areas in which you need to work on and what you need to grow on more, and you will put more focus or more emphasis in those areas, as a part of your growth process within this truth, and within your everyday walk in Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Okay, so, with that, I know I did a lot of talking, but I just hope this was edifying. So I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, the Awanas to the apostles and the elders of the great millstone, and Shalom to Lekman out there doing this work of faith and labor of love and true sincerity. Shalom and death to America.